Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. This is the 15th part of What If Deku Can't Stop Adopting Kids. Hope you enjoy. Link to the original story and author in the description. Chapter 76, Halloween. Note, this chapter and the next two are non-canon to the story because of timeline. I could skip them, but they are fun chapters, so here you go. Izuku had gathered up all the kids in his office, all except for Mu, Kai, and Fukunoko, for an exciting announcement. Alright everyone, as you know Halloween is coming soon, and I have plans for us to fully enjoy the holiday, Izuku said as he saw the excitement in the children grow. Firstly, since we'll be staying up late that night, the classes after Halloween will be suspended. Yeah. Fewer children cheered at that than you'd expect, but very few of them looked disappointed. Secondly, we'll be going trick-or-treating, from 10 a.m. to 10 p.m., Izuku announced. Yeah. Now all the children looked excited to some extent, except Fu, who couldn't care less. And when you all come back, there'll be a Halloween party with 1A, with several different events. Including pumpkin picking, jack-o'-lantern making, a maze, and of course a costume contest. Izuku continued. You don't have to participate, but if you do, you have to promise not to be upset if you lose. Understood? Izuku got nods all around, but some of the kids had a competitive look in their eyes, which made Izuku a bit nervous. You have the option to make your own costume, have someone else make it for you, or you can ask me to buy one for you, Izuku said, before looking at Shiroku. Shiroku, if someone asks you to make their costume, please do it for them, I'll add it to your allowance. Shiroku's eyes glowed, as she imagined all the Halloween units she could summon on her gotchas. Yes, Daddy. I'll do my best. Alrighty then, any questions? Izuku asked. Kei raised her hand. What about Kai, Fuku, and Mu? Are they gonna trick or treat with us? Izuku sighed. Unfortunately no. Both Fuku and Mu decided not to because, well, they don't want to. And Kai can't come because, well, he's too big. So instead Kaminari and Mina are gonna watch Halloween films with him until the party. And they all will be attending the party. Yes, even Fuku. This will be the first time she's been in a crowd, so don't overwhelm her, and try to make her feel comfortable. Understood? Once again more nods, before Nara raised her hand. Who is going to be chaperoning us while trick-or-treating? Ken rolled his eyes. We're not babies, we don't need chaperones. Yes, you do, Izuku responded, much to Ken's dismay. You'll all be split up into groups, and watched by myself, Achiko, Su, Ida, and Yaoyorozu. That makes sense, Nara said. Shiroku was the next to raise her hand. Who is going to be judging the contest? Izuku smiled. That is a special surprise, that I won't spoil for you. Now, are there any more questions? No one raised their hand. Good. Halloween is in a week, so just take that time to get ready. Izuku told them. Now, you're free to go. Immediately, the children ran to go think of costume ideas. XXXXXXXXXX. Absolutely not. Fu refused. Fu didn't really know what he wanted to be for Halloween. He didn't really have any plans for any kind of costume in particular. But when Kiba came into his room and made her suggestion, Fu instantly knew what he didn't want to go as. Please. Kiba begged, giving him the puppy dog eyes he had long since become mostly immune to. I have the perfect costume idea, and it will only be complete if you go in this specific costume. And Kyosei would make it even more perfect. I am not an accessory, Kiba. Fu deadpanned, crossing his arms. And I happen to have some sense of masculine pride left in my undead body. Okay, how much is that pride worth then? Kiba asked him. Because there are some great Halloween banners right now, and I'm sure you'd love the chance to summon on them, right? Fu grit his teeth, as his mind went to all the games he could use that money on. Are you really going to make me sell you my pride? Kiba just continued to smirk, confident that she got him. Because she did. XXXXXXXXXX. Interesting. I thought you would go with something more predictable, Shiroko said as she looked at Kiba's phone, which displayed the character she wanted to dress up as. Still, I never watched this anime, but the character looks like they fit you. They do indeed. This character is one of the only characters in fiction worthy of my admiration. And as such would be the only character worth dyeing my hair for, Kiba said as she was practically shaking with excitement. This has been my idea for a costume ever since I laid eyes on their anime. Which also brings me to Fu's costume. Fu sighed in the background, regretting letting Kiba drag him all the way over here. Just show her it already. Kiba excitedly showed Shiroko the next character, the character Fu would be dressing up as. Shiroko's eyes widened, and she stared at the image for a bit in disbelief, before turning to Fu who was looking away from her, blushing more than she'd ever seen him blush before. Are you sure you want to dress up as them? Look, Halloween banners are up, and she is paying me a considerable amount of money to wear that, Fu explained. You understand. You're an addict too. Shiroko gave him a sympathetic look. Alright, as long as you're sure. Of course we'll also need a lot of makeup, a wig, and some props, Kiba said. I want these to be perfect. Fu groaned. Yeah, perfect. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX. Really? Izuku said as he looked at the notes detailing Kiba and Fu's costumes, and what would be needed to complete them. Fu wants to wear that? More like Kiba paid him to wear it, Shiroko explained. Ah, that makes more sense. Izuku sighed. That girl, at least I don't have to worry about her being financially independent. Alright, well I can get pretty much everything here. The guns will obviously have to be fake though. Yeah, that makes sense, Shiroko responded. Also, have you decided what you want to be yet? Izuku asked her. Shiroko then, unexpectedly, frowned, and her mood seemed to darken. I haven't. That's unexpected, Izuku said. He'd thought Shiroko would have loved this opportunity. What's wrong? Well, it's just, I want to make this special. Shiroko admitted, looking sheepish as her pale cheeks turned red. Normally during Halloween, I would just celebrate by making simple dresses based on ghosts or pumpkins. I never made a costume because... Shiroko gestured down to her lower body. But this year, it's my first Halloween with my family. I really want to make a costume, but... Shiroko paused. How do I make a costume when I look like this? I could make a scary costume like a ghost or a spider monster, but those don't feel like they match me, but they would match my body more than something like a princess or fairy costume. I don't know what to do. Nothing feels like me. Oh, Shiroko. Izuku got up and hugged his spider daughter. Your body isn't limited to dressing up as scary monsters. Yes, people can find your spider half to be rather frightening. But there's more to you than just that half. Your upper half has beautiful white skin and hair, and mesmerizing eyes. Maybe you don't have to pick one or the other. Scary or pretty. Maybe the key is finding a way to combine the two somehow. Combine the two, Shiroko repeated, as her eyes widened. It was then the dam broke. Suddenly dozens of ideas started to form in her head, and the creativity block she had suffered was long gone. That's it. Shiroko was so happy she almost cried, looking at her father with a huge grin on her face. I know exactly what to do now. Oh, thank you, Daddy. Shiroko hugged him back, hard enough that Izuku could feel his bones creak. Ack! Shiroko! Use strength! Izuku reminded her urgently. Oh. Sorry, Daddy. I just got excited. Shiroko released Izuku from her death grip and immediately made a beeline for the door. I have to start making designs. I'll show you when it's ready, Daddy, you're going to love it. Slam! And she was gone. Once Izuku got over his bones almost being crushed, he smiled. Ah! This is the best part of my job. XXXXXXXXXX. Fukunoko looked over her work that was splayed across her bed, with dissatisfaction. No. Oh, why can't I get this right? Stupid, useless Fuku. Knock knock knock. EAP. Fuku jumped a bit when someone knocked on her door. Who is it? It's me. Shiruku. Shiruku said on the other side of the door. Can I come in, please? I want to ask you a favor. A favor. Fuku felt nervous. What kind of favor? I just want you to draw some things for me, Shiruku explained. Can I come in, please? Fuku hesitated. She didn't know Shiruku super well, but she did make her hoodies, and she loved her hoodies. This seemed like the least she could do in return. So after working up a bit of courage, Fuku opened her door. Shiruku crawled inside and gave Fuku a thankful smile. Thank you. You were the only one I could rely on here. Rely on me? Fuku blushed. I doubt I'm the best person for the job. Nonsense. Besides Daddy, you're the best artist here. Shiruku pointed out. But I want to keep this a secret from Daddy. I don't want him to see my costume until Halloween. Oh, you wanted me to make you a costume. Fuku frowned and looked back at her own attempt at a costume on her bed. This of course drew Shiruku's attention, as she looked at what Fuku was staring at. Is that a blue shirt? Ah! Fuku jolted when she realized what she did, and quickly grabbed the shirt, before hiding it behind her back. Don't worry about that. Let's just focus on your costume. But Shiruku ignored her, and simply went up to her and grabbed the blue shirt, taking a closer look at it. It looks handmade. Did you make this? Fuku looked down at the floor, ashamed of herself. I know it's bad, and it must be an insult to someone like you. I'm sorry for even trying. No. It's pretty good. Could use some touching up, a lot of touching up. But it's not bad. Shiruku told her. I just didn't know you liked to sew. I try it every now and then, it's just a hobby, Fuku said. Although I wish I was better at it. I wanted to make my own costume, but I just can't seem to get it right. Well, then I'll help you. Shiruku offered. I'll help you learn how to make clothes, and you can help me learn how to draw. Deal? Shiruku extended her hand out. Fuku looked at it nervously, before taking a look at her incomplete costume and making up her mind. Deal. XXXXXXXXXXX. A week had passed surprisingly quickly, and Halloween was finally upon them. Wana had gotten there early in the morning, to do what was asked of them. Mina and Kaminari were already keeping Kai busy, while most of the other members of the class worked to get the Halloween party set up. Of course, the exceptions were Achiko, Ida, Sue, and Momo, who were dressed up and ready to escort the kids. For some reason, there seemed to be a fantasy theme among all of them. Achiko was dressed as some kind of hooded mage, complete with a wooden staff. Sue was dressed as a barmaid. And both Ida and Momo were dressed as knights. Wow, you guys look great. Izuku said as he came down the stairs in the main hall to meet them. Oh, the woe. Achiko as well as the rest of her friends were shocked when they saw Izuku's costume. Now, one might expect Izuku to dress up as All Might. And if this were every other Halloween they'd be right. But for this new and special Halloween, Izuku wanted to try something new. And thus his costume here was Pinhead from Hellraiser. Ah! Achiko was speechless as Izuku walked towards them, looking just weird. This is not what I expected from you, Midoriya, Ida said, getting over his own shock. I don't anyone expected this from Midoriya, Sue said. It is rather strange, Momo added. Yeah, I wanted to go with something different. New me, new kinds of costumes, you know. Izuku gave a nervous chuckle. Too much? No, it's just unexpected, Achiko said. Well, I guess that's what I was going for. Izuku chuckled. The kids should be here any minute, so I guess we just dash. Alright, let's start the candy hunt, shouted Ken. Hey, wait up, doofus. Nara yelled. The two came down the stairs in their fresh new costumes. Ken was Omni-Man from Invincible. And Nara was just dressed as a witch. Alright, we're ready to go. Ken said eagerly. What do you think of my costume? Awesome, right? It's certainly well made, Sue said. Yeah, you look like a real superhero. Achiko praised him. Nara rolled her eyes. More like a super dweeb. Yeah, have fun dressing up as mass murderer, bro. Oh, come on, he had character development after that. Ken argued. He did a lot of great things. Doesn't make him not a mass murderer. Nara retorted with a smug smirk. Before their argument could progress much further, the next group of kids came downstairs. We're ready, Daddy. Kei came running down the stairs, followed by Eri and Kyoku. Kei was predictably dressed in a snake costume. Was it very creative? No. Was it very Kei? Yes. Eri was also dressed as something more predictable, a unicorn. Lastly, there was Kyoku, who was dressed as Jason Voorhees. Yep. I can't wait to scare the heck out of people. Kyoku shouted with excitement as she waved around her fake machete. Are you sure that is an appropriate costume for her? Ida asked Izuku. Izuku shrugged. It's what she wanted to be. Ah, look at you two. You're so cute. Achiko said, leaning down and hugging the two girls. Thank you. Kei giggled, hugging her back. You look great too, Achiko. Why yeah, Eri said, a bit more flustered about this. Then the next group of kids arrived. Dad, we're ready. Netsu shouted as he came down, followed by Yami, Yonda, Otoko, and Sanson. Netsu was dressed up as the Human Torch from the Fantastic Four. Unfortunately, the clothes had to go over the flames, unlike how it was with the actual character, but if they tried to do it the other way, then that would result in him setting everything on fire. Yami was the Grim Reaper, which made far too much sense. He was basically just wearing his own Aegis robe, along with a plastic bone scythe. One thing to note was that unlike Izuku, where you couldn't see anything of his face as long as the hood was on, you could still see Yami's glowing red eyes, making it even creepier. Yonda was simply dressed up as a princess in a pink dress, with a golden crown. Simple, but it made her happy. Otoko probably had the most simple costume. He was a ghost, with a white sheath thrown over him, and some eye holes coming out. Again, simple, but given his appearance, there wasn't much he could do, and unlike Shiroku, he didn't care enough to think about it. He was just happy to be here. There was also an argument that could be made that Sanson had the most simple costume, but also the most accurate. She was dressed as Rimuru Tempest from that time I got reincarnated as a slime, particularly she was dressed up as his slime form, which was just a ball of blue slime with black lines for eyes, so all Sanson had to do was ask Izuku to dye her body that same shade of blue, and then add some black pencils for the eyes. She was also staying in Rimuru's standard blob shape, although she was bouncing around even more than normal. Wow, you two are really scary, Sue said to Otoko and Yami. They're simple but effective. Thanks, Yami responded. Otoko singed thank you as well. What do you think of my costume? Yonda asked everyone, doing a twirl to show it off. It's pretty, Achiko thought. A princess, such a simple, yet appropriate costume. Ida thought. Cute, thought Sue. It's refreshingly childlike, Momo thought. You look even more like a princess than normal. Izuku smiled at her. Yonda smiled at him and hugged his leg. Cute, everyone thought. Come on, we're going to make everyone late, came Kiba's voice from upstairs. We wouldn't have to worry about that if you didn't take so long adjusting the wig, came Fu's voice. Well, it had to be perfect. If you're going to do this, then you might as well do it right, Kiba argued. You have a point. Fu sighed. Hearing them coming downstairs, Izuku quickly turned to the kids. Now kids, I don't want you making fun of each other's costumes, especially Fu's. If you do, then half your candy goes to Fuku and Mu. What's Fu's in particular? Su asked. Did Kiba force him to dress up as something embarrassing? You'll see. Izuku sighed. A few seconds later, Kiba and Fu came downstairs. Everyone looked at Fu in shock. And both Ken and Kyoko had to hold in their laughter. Kiba was dressed as Alucard from Hellsing Ultimate. Getting everything right down to his black clothes and red coat, to his red hat, to his glasses, heck, she even dyed her hair black and had fake guns to match. And Fu was dressed as Sarah's from Hellsing Ultimate. This included her yellow uniform, as well as her skirt and stockings. Kiba had even used makeup to make his skin more in line with the characters, as well as colored contacts and a wig. Oh my god. Achiko forced down a laugh and gave the boy a sympathetic look. Well, it's certainly well done, Ida responded, completely stunned by this. That girl. Su facepalmed, shaking her head at Kiba's antics. Wow, Dad, did we get a new sister? Kei asked Izuku. Yeah, when did that happen? Netsu added. Fu sighed. No, it's me. Eh? Both Netsu and Kei gasped, having not quite figured out it was Fu up until this point. Fu? Oh wow, your costume is amazing. Kei praised. I didn't even know you were a boy, you're so pretty. Yeah, I thought you were a girl too. Netsu added, giving him a thumbs up. Nice job. Fu's eye twitch. Thank you. How much did Kiba pay you to wear this? Nara asked him, already guessing how the vampire girl managed this. A lot, Fu said, before turning his gaze to Kyoko and Ken, who were still trying not to laugh as hard as possible. I don't want to hear a word about this, from either of you. Hey, is someone going to talk about my costume? Kiba pouted. You look cool too, Kiba. Netsu praised her. I like your hair. Yes, it looks good in black. Yanda added. Poof. That will do for now. Kiba said. Then they heard more footsteps coming down the stairs, belonging to the last child left. Everyone looked up, as Shiruko came down. Shiruko's costume was vastly more unique than anyone else's, not being based off a character or basic Halloween type of thing, it was completely original. Her costume looked to be based on a shrine maiden, but darker and with some spider-based elements. The normally white upper part was instead black, with some red thrown in. She had a hood which went down to her back like a cape, and while the part around her head was the same black and red, the part going down her back was obviously webbing and had a web-like design. The long sleeves, instead of having red lines along the edge of the sleeve, instead now it was red spiders. And instead of the lower half being red, it also looked like webs, much like the back of her hood. And the red bow around her waist had 6 frills on it, 3 of both sides, making it reminiscent of a spider. She even had a small staff, with a red spider with frills for legs at the end. Heck, she even painted some red patterns on her spider half. It was a very intricate and well-designed costume that had everyone in awe. Wow! Kei gasped, looking at her sister with stars in her eyes. You're beautiful. Yanda said in astonishment. So cool. Netsu said. Wow, that looks amazing, Shiroku. Nara praised. Now I'm starting to wish I put more effort into mine. It's so pretty, Eri said, seemingly mesmerized by the costume. To think something of such high quality could come from a child, Ida said, before giving applause. Bravo! Bravo! Such hard work and dedication. It's truly an amazing costume. Not just that, but the creativity on display, Momo said, as she got a closer look at the costume. It's astounding. Shiruko had a huge grin on her face, as this time tears of joy did come from her eyes. Thank you. I worked really hard on it. The spider girl then turned to Izuku, who smiled fondly at her. Did I find the right balance, Daddy? It's perfect, Izuku said, leaning down and hugging her once again. But I didn't do it alone, Shiruko said, as she broke the hug and looked up the stairs. I had some help from a certain someone. There was a long pause before more footsteps could be heard coming down the steps. And down came Fuku, in a Link from the Legend of Zelda costume. But it wasn't some slap-together green tunic and hat, no, this was a perfect recreation of the Link outfit as seen in Breath of the Wild. Starting from the ground up, she had on his brown boots and light-colored pants. Next was the iconic blue tunic, which was decorated just like how it was in the game. As well as having 3 belts, 2 around her waist and 1 across her chest, 1 to hold the quiver full of arrows on her back, 1 to hold her Sheikah slate, and 1 to hold her master sword, scabbard, Hylian shield, and bow. She was also wearing an undershirt that sleeves showed outside of the tunic, and the brown glove on her right hand, with her other hand exposed. Lastly, she even dyed and styled her hair, to look more like Link from that game, including a ponytail, although her bangs were noticeably shorter than Link's. One last detail was that her left hand was painted the Triforce of Courage, that Link obtained in Breath of the Wild sequel. Once again everyone was amazed, both by the detail and work that went into the costume, the fact that Fuku was wearing it, and the fact that Fuku had shown up. Wow. Kei ran up to Fuku the moment she sheepishly arrived down the stairs. Fuku, you look so cool. Wah, I do. Fuku seemed surprised by this sudden praise. I mean, me and Shiroku worked really hard on this, and I was really happy about how it turned out, but I was also nervous that I missed something or it just didn't fit me. So I was really nervous about how I would look, and I'm talking too much, aren't I? You're fine, Shiroku said, going over to Fuku and holding up her left hand to her face. Remember this? Right, courage, Fuku said, as looked at the painted-on Triforce fragment. You look great, Fuku. Eri said, eager to support her. I definitely didn't expect you to wear something this dashing. Yonda said. Sanson made a hand come out of her body and gave her thumbs up. Ah. You guys. Fuku blushed intensely. I think you look good too, Fuku, Fu said. Thanks Fuku froze when she saw Fu. Fu? Yep. Fu sighed. Oh, I didn't know you were into that kind of thing. Fuku said. I mean, I'm dressed as a guy so I'm not going to judge. Fu didn't even bother to respond to that. Having lost all will to resist at this point, and just going with the flow. And that's not all. Fuku was going to go trick or treating with us. Shiruku announced. Really? Izuku's eyes widened in shock before he turned to Fuku. And you agreed to this? Fuku nodded, looking back at the mark on her hand. I am the brave hero of the wild. Link! I can't just hide away like a coward while I have the Triforce of Courage on my hand. It wouldn't make any sense. So I decided that I would go out and have fun with all of you. Eri and Kei looked at her with amazement, and everyone else was surprised by this as well. Achiko went to Izuku and whispered in his ear. Are you sure about this? What if her quirk goes off? She's gotten a lot better control of it after we started training, Izuku said. And she knows what to do if she feels overwhelmed. Right, Fuku? Fuku nodded. Run away so no one else gets hit by the gas. That's right, Izuku said. Well, then I don't see any issue with her going. Yay! Kei cheered, before hugging Fuku. I'm so excited. Eri joined the hug, and once again Fuku's face was redder than a tomato. Alright everyone, it's time to split up into groups. Izuku announced, before turning to Achiko and company. Could you guys spread out please? They all nodded and spread out amongst the room. Okay, so Group A will be going with me, Izuku said. Group A will be Shiruku, Eri, Fuku, Kiba, and Fu. Next will be Group B with Achiko. This will be Kei, Kyoku, and Otoko. Group C will be with Sue. This group will be Yami, Yanda, and Sansan. Next will be Group D going with Ida and Yayorozu. This group will be Netsu, Ken, and Nara. Why does our group have 2 people watching us? Ken protested. Because I know you're the most likely to try and pull some Halloween trick, that'll cause everyone a lot of headaches. Izuku deadpanned. Yeah, that's fair, Nara admitted. Don't worry, I'll do my part to make sure he stays out of trouble. Thank you, Izuku said. Alright, everyone. With that out of the way, time to trick or treat. Chapter 77, Halloween Part 2. Randamuo hated Halloween. Every year, brats would come up to his door, in cheap store-bought costumes, and interrupt whatever he happened to be doing at the time. So he was in a pretty bad mood when he was just sitting on his sofa, watching TV when the doorbell rang. Ugh! Ran groaned, as he got up and grabbed the bowl of candy sitting next to him. It wasn't like he could ignore them. His wife always got on his case if he ignored even a single trick or treater. And she always knew. Ran went up to his door and opened it. And boy, this was not what he was expecting. There were 5 little girls and 1 teenager outside his door. Now that part wasn't the unexpected part. The teenager was probably just one of these kids' older brother, who was forced into chaperoning their little sister and her friends. It was their appearances that were off-putting. The first thing he noticed was the girl whose bottom half was a spider. Now, Ran wasn't a quirkist. He thought people who judged others based on something they couldn't control were scum. That being said, he was, like many, arachnophobic, so seeing this girl scared the shit out of him at first. However, knowing that this was wrong, Ran quickly focused on her upper half, which actually was easier than you'd think because the costume she was wearing, some kind of spider-themed shrine maiden, was both creative and rather pretty. So if the goal was to make a costume so good it took people's attention off her spider body, then he mentally applauded the tailor who made this. There was also a girl that was dressed as Link. That wasn't very notable in and of itself. What was that she was shaking in terror? Seriously, someone help this young girl. The other one that really boggled his mind was the teenager, who was wearing a Pinhead from Hellraiser costume. How did this kid even know about that character? It's so old. All the other girls were less mind-blowing. 2 seemed to be dressed up as some kind of anime characters, and 1 was dressed up as a unicorn. Trick or treat! Yelled all the kids except the one dressed as Link. Wait a minute. Ran looked at the little blonde girl. That was a male voice coming from that one. You what? He wasn't gonna think about it. Maybe they just had a deeper voice, or maybe they were a young crossdresser, who was he to judge? Trick dash the one in the Link costume was struggling hard to try and say trick or treat. Is she gonna be okay? Ran asked the teen. It's her first time. The teen explained. First time trick or treating? Ran asked. The teen winced. That, amongst other things. Now, what the hell did that mean? Come on, you can do this. The unicorn girl encouraged the shy one. You're the hero. You can't back down now. The black-haired anime girl added. You can do it. Said the blonde girl who Ran was half convinced was a boy. Courage. Remember, you have the Triforce of Courage. The spider girl picked up the shy girl's left hand, which had a gold triangle on it. Alright. See, courage. The shy girl psyched herself up. Try trick or treat. Yeah, you did it. All the girls, the teen, and maybe one boy? Still unsure about that, cheered for her, before looking at Ran expectantly. Here. Ran took candy out of the bowl and gave it to the kids, giving some extra to the shy one because it seems like she should get some kind of reward for overcoming whatever was going on with her. Thank you, said the children and teen, before taking their leave. Well, that is probably the most interesting thing that'll happen to me tonight. Ran thought. XXXXXXXXXXX. Ding dong. Ran sighed, and put down his popcorn bowl, paused his movie, grabbed the candy bowl, and got up to answer the door for what felt like the millionth time today. He opened the door. Okay, another weird one. Altogether there were 2 kids, 1 teen, and 1 adult. Maybe they were a family? Who knows? Now most of them were normal. The teen was dressed as some kind of wizard. The adult had the most basic, uncreative bedsheet ghost costume. One of the girls was wearing a normal snake costume. Mind you, she did have snakes for hair, but that was likely part of her quirk, so he would try not to stare. But the final girl, no older than 8 maybe, is what gave him pause. Now when you pictured a little girl on Halloween, what kind of costume would imagine they would have? A princess? A fairy? A fairy princess? Maybe a female pro-hero? Something along those lines, right? What probably won't come to mind is what the girl is actually dressed up as, Jason fucking Voorhees. Machete included. Why would her parents let her watch those movies? Why would they let her dress up as that mass murderer? Why would she want to dress up as that mass murderer? Honestly, this was probably the scariest costume he'd see tonight, if only for the implications. Trick or treat, said the snake girl, with the other girl staying silent, only raising up her, presumably, fake weapon, and holding up her candy bucket as if she were mugging him. Not wanting to anger the small girl, Ran quickly put some candy in both of their buckets. But then, much to his surprise, the guy dressed as a ghost also had a bucket of candy, holding it out for him to fill. Ran gave the man an odd look. Aren't you a bit old for this? He's 7. The teen girl told him. Ran's eyes widened in shock, and he was sure his jaw fell to the floor. Oh. That was a 7-year-old. What on earth were they feeding this kid? By the time he got to his teens, this kid was gonna be like 10 feet tall or something. Ha! Sorry about that. Ran laughed nervously, putting some candy in his bowl. It's just he looks older than he, is apparently. The tall boy then proceeded to poke his hand out of his costume and, maybe he'd been a bit too quick to say his costume was uncreative. He then started using what he assumed was sign language, which he, unfortunately, didn't understand. He's saying it's okay. It happens a lot. The teen girl said. Thank you for being understanding. Happy Halloween. All of them then started to leave, except for the Jason girl, who stayed there for a minute, standing there, breathing loudly. It was creepy as hell. Can I help you? Ran asked. The girl then dropped the fake blade, and reached out behind her, pulling something out of the back of her jacket. It was another, slightly smaller machete, this one much more real-looking, and covered in dried blood. What the? Ran fell backward in fear, dropping the candy bowl in the process. Aha! The girl just laughed maliciously, before putting the weapon away, and stealing the candy bowl, before running after her group, laughing evilly as she went. After recovering from that shock, Ran quickly got up and closed the door. Never would he ever tell anyone about the time he was mugged by a child. XXXXXXXXXXXXX. Ding dong. Ran once again paused the TV, got up, grabbed the second bowl of candy because the first one was gone, and went to answer the door. He opened it and... Aha! Ran screamed the moment he laid eyes upon one of the kids. Turns out, the Jason girl would not be the scariest thing he'd seen today. This kid was dressed up as the Grim Reaper, and it was a damn good costume. A completely black robe, with pieces of white bone all around it. Their face, completely shrouded in darkness, except for 2 bright red dots that were presumably their eyes. He was also carrying a bone scythe, that did not look like it was made of plastic. The only parts of their body Ran could see were their hands, being unnaturally pale with pitch-black fingernails. This is exactly what he'd imagined death as an elementary school student would look like. And just when he thought that was the worst of it, he heard a voice in his head. Are you all right, sir? He heard a female voice in his head. Ah! Ran screamed again. Who said that? Why are you in my head? Sir, please calm down, said a green-haired teenager that looked to be chaperoning the children. The voice you heard is this little girl's quirk. She can't turn it off, and she can hear your thoughts. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. Ran screamed in his mind. How am I not supposed to worry about it? That's extremely worrying. Wait, she can hear me. Oh God, what do I do? Ran tried to calm himself down, and took note of the full group. There was the aforementioned kid dressed up as Death and the teen girl dressed as a barmaid. Aside from them, there were two more children. One was dressed as a princess, and presumably was the one who was hearing his thoughts. And the last one was a slime. A small, round, blue slime, with black pencils that seemed to mimic eyes of some sort. He honestly couldn't tell the gender of this child, assuming they had one. Still, Ran was not a particularly strong person. And so when faced with a mind reader, and Kid Death over here, he did, at what he thought any reasonable person would do. He tossed the candy bowl into the hands of the teen and ran back inside. Once again, he would never tell anyone of the night in which he was scared out of his wits by children. Twice. XXXXXXXXXX. At this point, Ran didn't even bother watching anything anymore. It was late, so soon enough the hordes of kids would be going back home, and the trick-or-treating stuff would be done with. Ding dong. Ran got up, the third bowl of candy already in their hands, as they opened the door. Oh, one of the kids was on fire, sure. Why not? That might as well happen. This group consisted of 5 people, this time there being 2 teens and 3 kids. One, as was stated, was on fire, wearing a mostly blue costume with a 4 logo on it. Then there was a kid dressed as some kind of superhero, be it real or fictional he didn't know. And the last one was a plain and simple witch. The 2 teens were dressed as knights. Weird how many groups of teens chaperoning kids while also wearing fantasy-based costumes he'd seen tonight. Trick or treat, the kids said, holding out their buckets, which were full of candy. Well, besides the kid that was on fire, this group seemed relatively normal. At least he wouldn't have to deal with anything weird this time. Splash! And suddenly, the kid in the superhero costume pulled out a hidden water pistol and shot him in the face with it. You know what, Ran was done with Halloween this year. And so, the man simple placed the bowl outside his doorstep, closed the door, and went back inside. XXXXXXXXXX. Izuku and the rest of his group started walking back to the house, with Kiba and Shiroku carrying the huge load of candy they got. Well, I'd say this was a pretty successful Halloween, Izuku said, before turning his attention to Fuku, who was still on edge, but looked extremely relieved to be going home, while also sneaking glances at the candy pile. And I'm so proud of you for coming outside like this, Fuku. And on top of that, you only had to let your gas 7 times. Yes, we are all extremely proud of you. Kiba smiled at her. You made a fantastic debut to the outside world. And in a truly stunning costume. Ah, it's not that great. Fuku blushed, hiding away her face. It's nothing compared to Shiroku's or Kiba's. I think it's just as good. Eri told her. You did a great job making it. Maybe not as good as Shiroku's, but that's an unrealistically high bar, Fu told her. You worked really hard today, so just accept the praise. Indeed. Today you showed true courage, facing off against terrifying monsters such as depression, anxiety, and crippling fear. Kiba told her. You gave a battle, worthy of the character you mimic. Yeah, courage. Fuku looked down at the Triforce on her hand and smiled a bit. Yeah, I was brave. I really went trick-or-treating. Outside. In the city. That's right. And we're all so happy you did. Izuku said, giving her a pat on the head. Although I was rather surprised when I saw you choose to dress up as Link of all characters, Kiba noted. I didn't expect something so daring. Do tell, what exactly made you want to be Link in the first place? Well, I've always admired characters like Link. Able to face off against any kind of danger. Explore the world. Have adventures. It's the same reason I admire you, Lady Kiba. Fuku explained sheepishly. I'll never be as brave or strong as you or Link, but if I can pretend to be them, even for just a little bit, it makes me feel stronger. Fuku looked down at the Triforce on her hand. I know this is just some paint that I put on my hand, but if I don't think about that, then it really does feel like it's giving me strength. Like I have a goddess pushing me forward. There was a small pause before Fuku turned to look at the group. One day I want to be strong enough to do these kinds of things without shaking in fear. So thank you all for supporting me. It means everything to me. And one day I will be able to do things without clinging to you guys for help. I promise. Everyone smiled at her, happy to see her growing so much. Well, I think this occasion is deserving of a reward, Kiba said, rubbing her hands together mischievously. Everyone, it's time for congratulatory head pats. Wait. No. Fuku gasped, as suddenly the other kids started approaching her, and she pulled out her master sword. Stay back. I have the power of the goddess and anime on my side. Unfortunately for her, neither of those things would save her. Chapter 78, Halloween Part 3. With it now being late into the night, all the groups had finally returned to the house. So, Kyoko, Ken, would you mind explaining these? Izuku cornered the two children, holding up the water pistol and machete respectively. You brought a real machete? Ken asked, looking at Kyoko with a shocked expression. I didn't hurt anyone with it. Kyoko pouted. No, but you did mug people out of their candy. Izuku gave her a stern look. How did you think that was possibly an okay thing to do? Kyoko didn't answer, only looking away guiltily. Izuku sighed. How did you even get this? I found it. Kyoko obviously lied. You found it, Izuku repeated skeptically. Where exactly did you find it? Around. Kyoko replied. Kyoko, whose memories did you mess with to get this? Izuku asked, having figured her out by now. Momo's, Kyoko muttered, slumping over sadly at having been found out. When did she? Actually, I suppose given her quirk me not remember it makes sense, Momo said. Kyoko, what have I told you about using your quirk on people without their permission? Izuku asked her with an upset expression. Not to. Kyoko answered despondently. And so why did you do it anyway? Izuku asked her. Because I wanted to scare people. Kyoko moped. I thought it would be fun. Izuku sighed. And there are ways to do that, without carrying around an actual weapon. You could have asked me if you wanted to give people a Halloween scare. Sorry, Daddy. Kyoko apologized, lowering her head in shame. Izuku sighed, look, for now, we'll be taking half the candy you got, which is more than fair considering you stole a lot of it. We'll discuss further punishments tomorrow. For now, I want you to enjoy the party, understood? Yes, Daddy. Kyoko sighed. Izuku then turned to Ken. Honestly, not the worst thing you could have done. Still shouldn't have done it, and you know that, but not too terrible. So, punishment free? Ken asked hopefully. Not quite. You're losing a quarter of your candy. Izuku told him. Ah, man. Ken groaned. Be grateful that's all the punishment he's giving you, doofus. Nara scowled at him. Anyone else would have done something much worse. Ken pouted. He knew that was true, which is why he wasn't making such a stink over it, but it still sucked. Although to be fair, he was still getting a lot of candy. All the kids had pulled in an obscene amount of candy. Each one of them filling more than a single bucket. Kyoko had gathered the most, because she stole it. Yami also got quite a bit more than the others, most likely because out of fear. Fuku and Shiroku would likely be tied for third in candy gathering, with both of them likely getting more candy because of the quality of their costumes, as well as Fuku getting some pity candy. Wait a minute, Sansan, Fu, and Netsu don't eat candy, Achiko pointed out. What are they gonna do with their candy? Well, I'm going to give Fu's to Mu, since he didn't get any, Izuku explained. And the rest will be given out as a prize to the winner of the costume contest and jack-o'-lantern making contest. What? Ken shouted in shock. There was a prize for that. You never said anything about that. I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory. You win a contest, you get a prize, Nara said smugly. And it wouldn't have made a difference anyway, no one's beating Shiroku at the costume contest. Shiroku smirked, feeling confident in her chances. Well, we'll see, Izuku said. Now let's go outside. Class 1A, as well as a few workers, have been setting up the party for us, and I think you'll like what they've done. XXXXXXXX. Izuku was right, the children were in fact very pleased. Class 1A had done a good job, putting up holiday decorations all over the place, as well as setting up tables, and whatever else would be needed for a party. Including setting up tables filled with various snack foods, all themed after Halloween. However, the most impressive work was done by the people who Izuku specifically hired to help change the place up. Firstly, the gardens, which had been mostly empty up until now, was now changed into a full-on pumpkin patch, with full-grown pumpkins included. And second was the pool, which had been filled with dry ice, making it give off a spooky mist. It really was astounding how much could get done in so little time, thanks to quirks. Man, you really spooked this place up. Ken praised. We tried our best, Kaminari said. All of Class 1A joined in the fantasy theme, with costumes ranging from witches to knights, to adventures. Heck, Kirishima had a dragon-themed costume. Cool. Sansan bounced around happily. And that's not all, Izuku told them. I also invited some extra guests. Then, they heard more people enter the backyard. That must be them now, Izuku said. Everyone looked towards the door, at the 6 guests that came along. In front of them was Amai, dressed up as Samus in her armor, excluding her helmet which she was holding. Behind her was Koda and the Wild Pussycats, all of whom were in their hero costumes, and Koda was wearing cat ears over his hat, and looked about as happy about that as you'd expect. Yami! Amai ran over to the cloaked boy, greeting him cheerfully. You look absolutely terrifying. Yup. Yami nodded. Knowing there was no actual fear or malice behind her statement, only an objective fact. Amai quickly spotted Fuku and gasped. Link! She went over to Fuku, who gasped and froze up. That's such a great costume. Amai praised as she looked over the whole outfit. So accurate too. You must have worked really hard on it. Why, yeah. Fuku stuttered. Why, yours is really good too. I like your arm cannon. Thank you. Amai said, holding up the fake weapon with a smile. Meanwhile, Kyoko walked up to Koda and giggled. Nice ears. Koda's eye twitched. Hey, I watched the Friday the 13th movies too. What was Jason killed by again? Alright. Water. Kyoko's eyes widened, as she quickly realized where this was going. Ah! Kyoko screamed as she ran away from Koda, who started shooting water blasts at her while chasing her. Koda! Mandalay called out to him, about him to chase after him to try and stop the child, but Izuku held out his hand to stop her. She needs to learn to stop antagonizing people, Izuku explained. And getting a little wet isn't a bad way to learn. He's got a point. Pixie Bob agreed. I suppose so. Mandalay sighed. Thank you for inviting us over, by the way. Koda was very happy to get the invitation. Although he was less happy about having to dress up for the occasion, Tiger added. I can see that, Izuku noted. Well, hopefully, he'll forget about it as the party goes on. At least he didn't get it as bad as Fu. Yeah, looks like little Kiba pulled him into something. Ragdoll giggled. Wait, where is Fu? Mandalay asked, not seeing the boy around. Standing next to Kiba, Izuku said, pointing over to Kiba and Fu, who were talking to Amai. Wait, that blonde girl is Fu. Pixie Bob shouted in shock. Damn, he looks good in a skirt. Never would have figured him for trap material. Please don't refer to any of my kids as trap material. Izuku deadpanned. Please don't refer to anyone as trap material. Mandalay deadpanned. Meanwhile, Fu heard all of this, as he blushed with embarrassment even more. Well, looks like almost everyone is here, Izuku said. Except for Dash. Thump. 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 Kai walked in, eagerly joining his other siblings in the festivities. Hey everyone. You're back. The giant boy came in with devil horns on all of his heads, which were a bit small for him, however, they were still huge. I'm here for the party. I've been waiting for this all day. Kai said eagerly. Well, alright then, the only person we're missing is Mu, Izuku said, before feeling a tug on his pants. He looked down and saw Mu, dressed as a shy guy from Mario. Oh, never mind, Izuku said. Let the party begin. Heck yeah! Nina cheered. XXXXXXXXXXX. Alright everyone. Time to start the pumpkin picking. Toru yelled out, as all the kids got around the new pumpkin patch. Remember, these will be the pumpkins you'll be using to make jack-o'-lanterns out of. So pick wisely. Kiba immediately dashed towards the largest pumpkin. One about as large as her body. Using her immense strength, she lifted the thing over to her head and took it away. Ken, not to be outdone, slammed down on his Omnitrix and turned into 4 arms, picking up a similarly sized pumpkin and taking it. Fu didn't even move from his table, instead using Kaiosei to grab a moderately sized pumpkin. Something to note is that to go better with the costume, Kaiosei turned red, instead of black. Sanson also wanted a big pumpkin, so she bounced over made a hand to pick it up. However, it was too heavy, and the pumpkin didn't budge. After a bit of struggling, Sanson heard some haughty laughter, and looked over to the source, to see Kiba's smug face looking at them. Oh? Is the mighty Sanson having issues? With something I did so easily? Kiba asked, looking and sounding smugger than ever. It seems perhaps lifting strength seems to be a weakness of yours? Sanson made one of those anime irritated symbols appear of her head, before looking back at the pumpkin and trying to figure out how to move it. Then she had an idea, and she made a light bulb appear on her head. Sanson then flattened herself, and went under the pumpkin, before raising it, and bringing it away. And as Sanson dragged it away, she extended a part of her, and shapeshifted it into Kiba's head, sending her smug face right back at her. Kiba glared at Sanson, and Fu rolled his eyes in the background. Mu quietly took a small pumpkin and went to his table. Likewise, Eri, Yanda, and Kyoko took smaller pumpkins, not really wanting to carry any of the bigger ones. Kei took on of the medium-sized pumpkin, struggling a bit to take it away, but happily doing so. Shiruku, despite having the strength to take a larger pumpkin, took one of the smaller, medium-sized ones, while Fuku struggled to bring one of the larger medium-sized over to her table. Netsa had on gloves, so he was able to carry over a medium-sized pumpkin to his table. Nara and Otoko picked smaller pumpkins, along with Kota and Amai. And with everyone's pumpkins gathered, now it was time to start carving. Fuku shyly approached Sato, who smiled as he saw her get closer. Can you? Fuku tried her best to ask for his assistance, while Sato waited patiently. Can you help me with my jack-o'-lantern? Of course. Sato gave her a light pat on the head. Let's get started. Can I join? Mu said, speaking so quietly that they almost didn't hear him. Amai went over to Yami. Wanna work together? Yami nodded, and the two got to work. Lady Kiba, do mind if your loyal servants step in and offer you some assistance? Mina asked, with Toru right behind her. Of course, Kiba responded happily. But just so you know, I won't tolerate any slacking. Of course, Lady K. Toru said. Some of the other kids went to ask for help, while others worked on their pumpkins by themselves, with careful supervision, to make sure they didn't hurt themselves or do something wrong. After everyone had finished up their jack-o'-lanterns. Alright, then, since Kai couldn't participate, he'll be judging the jack-o'-lanterns, Izuku explained. I'll do my best, Dad. Kai said excitedly, as he eagerly approached. Everyone. I'm gonna rate your pumpkins. Starting with Ken, Kai leaned down all three of his heads towards Ken's creation. The jack-o'-lantern had the symbol of the Omnitrix carved into it, and the fire lighting it was green. Izuku had given them some materials which would allow them to change the color of the fire. Oh. Like your watch. It's really cool. Kai praised. And it's green. I love green. A+. Ken puffed his chest out, looking extremely smug. Kai moved his head to look at Nara's next. Nara's pumpkin had a cat face carved into it, with a pink flame illuminating it. It's a cute kitty. Kai noted excitedly. It's cute. A+. Nara smiled at him and gave Kai a head pat. Thanks, Kai. Kai giggled, enjoying the head pat for a second, before moving on to the next kid, Sanson. Sanson had carved Rimuru Tempest himself into the jack-o'-lantern, lit by a blue flame. It matches your costume. A+. Kai graded. Is he just going to give everyone A+S? Kaminari asked. Kai moved on to Yami, whose pumpkin had a strange emblem on it, with some sort of eyeball in the center, surrounded by lines in a circle, Sailon's emblem, lit by a bright red flame. Spooky. Kai praised. How did you come up with it? Yami shrugged. Saw it in my dreams. Cool. A+. Kai graded. Yeah, he is, Izuku answered. This pattern did indeed continue, as Kai moved on to all the other kids' jack-o'-lanterns. Eri red flamed apple lantern, Kei's green flame snake lantern, Kyoko's scared-faced black flame jack-o'-lantern, Otoko's white flamed ghost jack-o'-lantern, Yonda's golden flamed crown lantern, Shiruko's black flamed spider lantern, Mu's red flamed shy guy lantern, Fukanoko's blue flamed Hylian shield lantern, Amai's red flamed Mario mushroom lantern, Kiba's red flamed bat lantern, and even Netsu's idea to stick the lantern on his head. Heck, even Fu's and Koda's generic lanterns got A+S. And so now that literally, everyone got the same grade, it seemingly left them at an impasse. Well, Kai, it looks like you gave everyone the same grade. Izuku stepped in, not surprised by this at all. Sorry, they're all just so good. Kai apologized. Don't worry about it, son, Izuku said, patting Kai's leg. Do you happen to have a favorite? Kai took a minute to think, looking over all the pumpkins once again. So hard, I like Fuku's. Ha! Fuku gasped, as froze up in shock. Congratulations, Fuku! Kei ran over and congratulated Fuku, along with Eri. I'm not happy about my loss, but at the very least, I lost to a worthy opponent. Kiba said, taking this surprisingly well. Amai was slightly upset about losing, but she also did really like Fuku's lantern, so that softened the blow. Ken was the most upset about losing and was actually about to say something when his sister grabbed onto his shoulder and whispered into his ear. Let her have this, or so help me and Kiba will make sure you don't see the light of day. Now Ken was pretty confident in his strength. But he was not confident enough to try and fight both his sister and Kiba at the same time, so he wisely shut his mouth. Now everyone, it's time for the costume contest, Izuku announced. That also means, I'll finally be announcing the judges. Suddenly, they heard the back door open again. And here they are now, Izuku said. Into the backyard came three pro heroes. Nizu, dressed in his usual suit, but with devil horns on his head. which was very appropriate, if a bit lazy. Midnight, who was dressed as a ghost, or rather, it was a quickly made ghost costume to cover up her actual costume, which was not appropriate for this event, to say the least. And lastly was the symbol of peace, All Might himself wearing a Frankenstein's monster costume. "Greetings, children. I am here," All Might announced. "All Might!" shouted many of the children in shock. "Ah ha ha!" All Might laughed, as many of the children flocked to him. "No way! The number one hero!" Ken looked up at All Might with stars in his eyes. "He's even bigger in person than he is on TV," Netsa said with equal amazement. Izuku went over to Nizu and Midnight, while the children were distracted by All Might. "Thank you all for coming. And thank you especially Midnight for not, Well, I couldn't refuse a chance to amaze some cute little kitties." Midnight giggled. "To tell you the truth, I didn't have many plans for tonight. For whatever reason, I don't get invited to many Halloween parties," Nizu explained. "I think they just don't want to tempt fate," Izuku thought. "Well, I think we should get on to the contest then. Don't want to make All Might stay in that form any longer than needed." XXXXXXXXXXXXXX. "Alright, everything is set, it's time for the contest to begin," Midnight announced as she and Nizu and All Might sat behind the judges' table, looking up at the stage. "Can the first contestant, Kiba dressed as Alucard from Hellsing Ultimate, come on stage?" With that, Kiba immediately ran on stage, showing off her costume, as well as her model guns. "Oh my, what a cool costume!" Midnight cooed. In reality, she thought it was adorable, but that was not what Kiba wanted to hear. "I love that you dyed your hair. Wonderful devotion." "Yes, it's about as accurate as you could be," Nizu said. All three judges had pictures of the character the child was dressed as. No detail was overlooked. "You can see the amount of effort that was put in, on both your part and the part of the tailor," All Might praised. Kiba smiled, happily taking in all the praise, and living it up in the spotlight. However, Midnight said, "If I had to nitpick, and as a judge, I do, your hair is a bit too long for the character. Yes, and I must say, while the clothes do suit you, your small stature does take away slightly from how intimidating the character is supposed to be," Nizu explained. "Wow, these two are really getting into this," All Might thought. Overall, it was done about as well as could be expected, but it held down by some very minor details that would be difficult to solve. Midnight said, "I give it a 9 out of 10. An 8 for me," Nizu said. Seems fine to me. I'll give it a 10. All Might judged. All Might then leaned down and whispered over to the other judges. "Aren't you guys thinking about this a bit too hard?" "Not at all, Might." Nizu laughed. "We must give our 100% in everything we do. Even this. Plus ultra and all." Meanwhile, Kiba pouted a bit but tried not to look upset. She knew it would be kind of petty to get worked up about this, and so she accepted the few points taken off of her costume with grace. "That leaves you with a score of 27 out of 30. Midnight announced. "Very good, sweetheart, a wonderful start. Well, next year I'll do even better. Just you watch," Kiba vowed as she exited the stage. "Alright, now on to the next contestant. Fu dressed as Ceres from Hellsing Ultimate," Midnight announced. Fu walked on stage, grumbling about being forced into this, with a slightly red face. The currently cross-dressing boy reluctantly showing off his costume, before allowing Kyosei to come out as a red tendril, adding to the costume's accuracy. My, the character accuracy is quite astounding. Of course, excluding the inclusion of breast, that is. Midnight giggled as the normally expressionless boy became more and more embarrassed. Perhaps Kyosei could help with that. It was then Fu felt Kyosei start to come out of his chest, and he immediately squished him back into his body. "Don't you dare!" Midnight was giggling like a madwoman back at the table, at how adorable this was. Come now, don't tease the poor boy, he clearly doesn't enjoy this. All Might told her. Well, that's a lie. Yami thought from the side. I must also praise the accuracy, and all the work put into hiding his gender, Nisa said. The makeup work, and impeccable wig, make it impossible to tell he's a boy. Guys, come on. All Might said out of sympathy. Well, it's a very, very nice costume, that you, pull off very well. Fu sighed. Thank you. Well, I give it a 9 out of 10. Would have been a 10, but no breast. Midnight teased. An 8 out of 10 for me, Nisa said. 10 out of 10. All Might judged. Have to give credit to the Plus Ultra makeup. Kiba smiled from the side, taking a bit of pride in this. After all, it was her idea, and she had done all of the makeup and wig work. She had tried to get him to attach fake breasts, but Fu refused, even when she offered to pay more. That gives you the same score as your sister. 27. Midnight said. Makes sense, because you're just as cute. Fu grit his teeth, as he could hear Ken and Kyoko giggling in the audience, as he exited the stage. Alright, next is Yami, dressed as the Grim Reaper, Nizu called. With that, Yami walked on stage, his red eyes staring into the souls of the judges. It is quite a chilling design, Nizu admitted. Even though it's a child, his appearance would make even a pro hero's skin crawl. It's like his eyes are drilling into me. Midnight shivered. Very impressive. I think there are many villains who'd sell their soul to look half as terrifying as you, young Yami. All Might laughed. Very good. Captures the Halloween spirit just right. Although honestly, I think the fake scythe brings it down a bit. Midnight said. It just reminds me that it is in fact a costume. Ah, I see what you're talking about. Nizu nodded. If it was just the robe, your naturally terrifying self, then I could believe that you were some actual incarnation of the Grim Reaper. I can kind of see that. All Might said, taking a closer look at the scythe. In that case, I would give it about an 8. Midnight said. I personally would score it a 9, Nizu added. 9. All Might would have given it a 10, but he had a feeling that given all the splendid costumes tonight, he would have to heighten his standards, otherwise everyone would get 10s. So that puts you at 26. Slightly lower than the other two, but still a very good score. Nizu told him. Yami shrugged. He only really participated because Amai suggested it. He wasn't too invested in how he did in the contest. And so he unceremoniously exited, making way for the next person. Alright, next we have Amai, as Samus Aran. All Might announced. Amai eagerly ran onto the stage, this time she had her helmet on, and aimed her arm cannon around at invisible targets, to better show off her costume. Very nice. Chibi little Samus. Midnight cooed. Every detail is accounted for, a very convincing costume overall. However, it does have that plastic shine that makes it seem a bit fake. Yes, that is indeed a problem. Nizu agreed. It's a small detail, but it goes a long way in making it feel real. With that said, everything else is so great, that I think I'll only deduct 1 point. 9 out of 10. Midnight said. I agree. 9 out of 10. Nizu said. Yes. 9 out of 10. All Might agree. And that brings your score up to a 27. Tied for first place so far. Midnight told her. I felt a twinge of disappointment, but quickly shook it off and bowed. Thank you all for your time. And with that, she exited the stage. On to our next contestant, Fukanoko, as Link. Midnight called. And with that, they all waited, as Fuku slowly walked on stage, trembling slightly with fear and anxiety. UMHI, Fuku said, trying her best not to give in to her fears and collapse on stage. Hello dear. Midnight said with a sweet costume. Won't you show off your costume for us? Fuku was struggling to remember what to do when out of the corner of her eye she saw Shiruka gesturing for her to use her bow. Oh. Yes. Fuku took her bow, as well as an arrow from her quiver, then took aim at a nearby branch, striking a dynamic pose in the process. Okay, Fuku, focus. Breath. Fuku took a deep breath and focused all her attention on her target. She felt the world around her fade away, until all there was the branch. Twip, twip. Thunk. Fuku let loose her arrow, and it flew into the branch, lodging the arrow into the wood. Oh my! Showing off a talent as well as her costume. Very nice. Midnight praised. And it's a character-accurate skill, I'm gonna have to bump it up a point for that. Very impressive display. A bow, a tricky thing to use, so to show such skill with it at such a young age is very admirable. All Might praised, giving her applause. I agree wholeheartedly. Nizu nodded. I think you have a future in Kyudo. Why you think so? Fuku stuttered, blushing intensely at all the praise. We know so, dear. Midnight said, giving her a reassuring smile. Now as for your ranking. To put it simply, your costume is utterly perfect. I can't find a single fault in it. Easily a 10 out 10. 9, Nizu added. The hair is a tad bit too long. I'll have to give it a 10. All Might said. I think the issue with the hair is so minor, in comparison to the character-accurate skill she just displayed. That brings you up to a 29. The highest score so far. You should be proud. Nizu told her. What? Fuku was shocked by how well she was doing tonight. First, she won the jack-o'-lantern contest, and now she was getting at least second place here. Was she actually talented? Fuku's mind was blown, and she walked off stage while completely out of it. Alright, for our last contestant we have Shiruku, in an original costume. Midnight said. Shiruko scuttled on stage, spreading her arms and waving around her staff, and showing off her costume. Oh my, what a beautiful costume. Midnight praised. Such wonderful colorwork and design, and it fits your unique body so well. I can feel all the thought and hard work put into putting this together. Indeed. When it comes to hero costumes, it's quite easy to tell how much thought and heart was put into each one of them. Nizu said. And while this isn't a hero costume, the same applies here. Not to mention the originality. Coming up with something truly original is difficult in this day and age, but you pulled it off beautifully. And one advantage of coming up with something original is that you have full control over what the costume looks like. All Might added. Meaning we can't take away any points for character inaccuracy. Overall, a truly splendid costume. 10 out 10. Midnight judged. Agreed. 10 out of 10. Nizu said. No complaints here. 10. All Might judged. And with that, you received a perfect 30. Making you the winner of the competition. Midnight applauded her, along with Nizu and All Might. Everyone else applauded her as well, including the other contestants. Alright, everyone. The party will continue for another hour, before coming to a close. Izuku announced. Enjoy. And as such, the children, 1A, and the teachers enjoyed the party, eating and talking away, into the night. Chapter 79, Interview. Seeing as it was now entirely too dangerous to go outside for a press conference, Izuku and Diozi decided to have an interview. As such, Izuku an interviewer, Inada BYU, and her camera crew. All of whom had been background checked, so no risk of them trying to kill him. The two of them were sitting on the couches that Izuku added to his office, with a coffee table between them. Thank you for your time, Mr. Midoriya, we know you're quite a busy person. Inada was clearly weirded out by interviewing someone of Izuku's age, but was being as professional as possible. Yes, my job has many benefits. But it is also full-time. Izuku said, putting on a forced smile. So, not to be rude, but I would prefer to get to the questioning. Of course, Hinata said. So, Mr. Midoriya, how did you come to start taking care of OPCs? You have to admit, taking care of children at your age is a peculiar decision. Well, that information was actually classified for quite a bit of time, Izuku said. However, after discussing it with some officials, we believe that we can safely share some information. Really? Hinata asked, looking interested. Please, do tell. Alright, so I had been at my house when suddenly I heard someone knocking on my door. Izuku started the story. I open it, and there is a very, very scared looking little girl. She was absolutely terrified. She said someone was chasing her and begged me not to let them get her. So naturally, I ushered her inside and closed the door. Of course, all that did was buy me a bit of time, before the villains broke into my house. Turns out, the villains she was getting chased by were the Yakuza. The Yakuza? Hinata said, looking a bit surprised. Yeah, them. Fortunately, I was able to act quickly. I hid the girl under a pile of laundry, not the most sanitary way of handling things, but I figured maybe they wouldn't check there, and then I got my phone, set it to record, and hid it, before I pretended to be asleep, using headphones to make it seem plausible that slept through their break-in. That seems like a lot to think of in such little time. Hinata pointed out. Seems like you're a quick thinker. Wait, you recorded the Yakuza breaking into your house? That's right. Izuku nodded. You might have heard about the story of the anonymous boy that took down the Yakuza. I was that boy. Really? Really? Hinata's eyes widened a bit. Well, it's not like I took them down single-handedly, Izuku said quickly. Sir Nitai's agency had been investigating them for years. They just needed a bit more direct proof of wrongdoing to get the ball going. I was pretty much the straw that broke the camel's back. Still impressive nonetheless, Hinata said. It was hard for Izuku to tell if she was just being formal or if that was genuine praise. And then after that, you and the young girl were moved into witness protection, correct? That's right. We stayed together for a while, and got attached to each other. Izuku said. So when I got the option to take her in, I did so. And this girl was your first OPC? Hinata asked, getting a nod from Izuku. Can I get her name and quirk by any chance? Well, I can give you her name, however, I think I should keep her quirk private. She's a shy girl, so sharing too much information about her feels wrong. Izuku told her. That's fair. Hinata agreed. So her name? It's Eri, Izuku answered. Eri, why was the Yakuza after her in the first place? Hinata asked. Ah, you see, Eri is the granddaughter of the former boss of the Yakuza, before Chisaki, aka Overhaul, took over, Izuku explained. So after the old boss fell ill, Chisaki decided to take care of his granddaughter out of respect. Unfortunately, Chisaki was a piece of literal human garbage. And was horrible abusive towards her, inflicting punishments that border on torture if she even thought of disobeying him. Even frequently using his quirk on her, in effect, killing her and then bringing her back multiple times using his quirk. Oh God. Izuku could tell Hinata looked genuinely disgusted by that. What a monster. I am aware. Trust me. Izuku grimaced as he recalled reading Chisaki's experiment notes and documents. But moving on with the story, that was only the first OPC I happened to bump into. First? You just happened to bump into 2 OPCs by accident? Hinata asked. More than 2, but we'll get there, Izuku said. One day I went shopping with Eri. I found that many of the shoppers had been turned to stone. As it turns out, a villain had abducted a homeless OPC child and was using her as a weapon to rob places. Fortunately, I managed to knock him unconscious with a tranquilizer dart and save the child. And then you ran into another after that? Hinata looked confused. That seems very unlikely. Extremely. Izuku agreed. I thought the same thing, especially when I ran into 2 more not too long after that. and then another one not long after that. Are you serious? Inada looked at him in disbelief. Absolutely, Izuku said, his face and tone showing that he was in fact dead serious. I'm aware it's insane sounding, but it is what happened. The kids started making jokes that I had a secret quirk that attracted OPCs. I can understand what that, I don't even have words. Inada responding. Yeah, well, seeing as I'd done a good job of taking care of so many of OPCs and was seemingly willing to adopt them to no end, they gave me an offer. Izuku continued. They wanted me to start this foundation and accept every OPC they had. They gave me a contract that told me that they would be funding my foundation, as well as building a facility for me and my children, and providing other measures of support, and I would do this job for the rest of my life. The rest of your life? Inada questioned. You mean you could never quit? Or stop accepting OPCs? That's right, Izuku confirmed. And you agreed to that? Inada asked, getting a nod from Izuku. Isn't that a bit reckless? As you said, this is a job that comes with a 24-hour work period. Doesn't that essentially lock you off from any other jobs? Didn't you have something in mind? A dream job or something? Izuku sighed. I did have a dream job once. I wanted to be a hero. Inada didn't say anything, but her wide eyes and befuddled look told him what she thought of that. It was my dream since I was a child. Izuku continued. I always thought that saving people was the coolest thing you could do. I admired heroes, obsessed over them even. I'm pretty sure there is no piece of All Might merchandise I don't either have or know about. I thought there was nothing that would stop me from chasing that dream, and then I was diagnosed as quirkless. That must have been devastating, Inada said, with a bit of sympathy. It was, Izuku said in a low voice. I still held on to my dream, but everyone else stopped believing in me. It's also when my life started going downhill. My father abandoned us, my friends turned their backs on me, and the schools were actively against me. We'd heard about the quirkist abuse you suffered at the hands of your schools, Inada said. We don't mean to bring up any bad memories, but could you elaborate on the way you were treated? There's not much to say really. They essentially did everything they could to make my life harder. Izuku said. Lowering my grades, blaming me for things other kids did, turning their heads when they saw me getting mistreated or assaulted, and if ever tried to defend myself then I would always be blamed for whatever happened. It was terrible. Even worse was the way they made me believe that deserved it, that I was really a lesser person just because I didn't have a quirk. Do you still believe that? Inada asked. It's hard not to. Izuku admitted. I developed a persecution complex. I just tend to blame myself whenever something goes wrong, and it's really difficult not to do that. It's also made accepting praise from others difficult, and has left me a lingering sense of paranoia. Have you sought mental help for your issues? Inada asked. Izuku sighed again. Not yet, I should have, but I've been very busy so I never found the time. I will get to it eventually, once I've hired more staff, but I believe we were discussing my dream, correct? That's right. Inada nodded. When exactly did you give up on that dream? I imagine it must have been hard to foster such a difficult dream with no one believing in you. You're correct, Izuku said. I held on to that dream for years, despite what everyone else said, until one day I met a high-ranking pro hero. And I asked them if I could become a pro hero, they said no. That's a rather divisive statement, Inada said. Care to share who that hero was? Izuku shook his head. As you said, that statement could be very divisive, and I don't want to cause that hero trouble. They said that not because of any base against quirkless people, but because they were concerned for my safety. Which I appreciate, even if it was absolutely devastating. Was this before or after you ran into Eri? Inada asked. Before. Izuku clarified. And so this left me with this feeling of hopelessness and a lack of purpose. For my entire life I'd clung to this dream, and so when that dream was gone there was just a void in me. And then I met Eri, and I started taking care of her, and it felt like that void where my dream once was being filled, seeing her grow and becoming happier as time went on. And that feeling only grew as I got more kids. So did you dream of becoming a hero, and lack of direction in life influence your decision to start this foundation? Inada asked. Yes, very much. Izuku nodded. I always wanted to help people, and this was a form of helping people. Just in a different form than what I originally wanted. These children needed love and affection, and I could give it to them. And me not having anything else I wanted to do, helped in the decision to sign. So you don't regret signing at all? Inada asked. No, Izuku answered immediately. No matter what downsides this job has, it's offset by seeing how happy those kids are. Nothing can beat that. I suppose the next question is, do you think you're qualified for this job? Inada asked. Because there are many people how capable a 15-year-old is for this position. Well, I can't blame them, Izuku said. But at the same time, I think the results speak for themselves. All the children are happy and healthy, and nothing had really gone wrong, with the exception of my crash, and I've been taking measures to make sure that doesn't happen again. And I imagine keeping things up and running is a rather difficult task, Inada said. How much goes into keeping this foundation running? Well, there's a lot, managing repairs for the forest and the house, which need to happen frequently because the kids often break things, and then I have to make lesson plans for both their formal education, their quirk training, and helping them learn their respective hobbies and future job prospects. I also need to manage the supplies of this place, such as food, school supplies, special support items, and more. And of course, you need to spend time with and support the children personally, making sure they get the amount of attention they need. That's quite a lot of work, Inada commented. And it's only scratching the surface, Izuku said. As I said, the job never really ends. Which is why I say the results speak for themselves. I can't argue with that. Inada agreed. Now, another topic I wanted to cover was the process of OPCs being brought here, and how it's handled. Firstly, say a parent wants to get rid of their OPC child, how does one do that? Well, first you have to get in contact with DOC. You can find the number online, and when you call them, you tell them that you think your child is an OPC and they send people to check if that is actually the case. If they label the child an OPC, they'll take them to one of the DOC facilities, where they'll be put into a list, to wait for their turn to be transferred here, into my care. Izuku explained. Okay, so when you obtain these children, are they legally your children, or are they still adoptable? Inada asked. Well, I'm not listed as their father, only their legal guardian. Izuku clarified. This decision was made because I'm aware that not all of the kids would be comfortable thinking of me as their father, nor would they appreciate having that thrust upon them. If they want to think of me as a father, then they can, or they can think of me as a brother or a friend. Or anything really. As for adaptability, for the most part, you can't adopt an OPC. The only way you could adopt one is via my approval, and I would only approve of that if the child genuinely unhappy in my care or would be happier in the care of the adopter, and even then I would demand very thorough background checks, inspection of their homes, and they would have to go through a year-long trial period before I would allow them to fully adopt the child. Those are some strict conditions, Inada noted. They have to be, Izuku told her. There are people who exploit OPCs for power. As I told you, there was a villain who used one of my daughters as a weapon to commit crimes. Not to mention adopting an OPC comes with a check to deal with their needs, as well compensate you for risking your life by raising them. People have adopted OPCs in the past, purely for this reason, and neglected the actual child. This kind of behavior cannot be allowed. This is why my process has to take so long and be as thorough as it is. That makes sense, Inada said. Now, I think it's time we address the elephant in the room, the assassination attempt. Izuku frowned. Well, I don't really have much to say on that. We don't know who sent the assassin, however, judging from what we do know, the motive behind their attacks seems to be quirkism. Of course, we are taking precautions to increase security, as you may have seen. Ah yes, those, what are they called? Inada asked. Grim, Izuku answered. Yes, those grim. Those were created by one of the children here, as was your robe, correct? Inada asked. That's right. My son Yami. Izuku told her. He had been, understandably worried about my lack of protection. He used his quirk to make the grim seen around the house as guards, as well as to serve other functions, like carrying heavy objects. One of those grim, made in cooperation with my daughter Shiruku, was this robe. Made to keep me safe should danger ever come to me. Right, and those things aren't actually alive, right? Inada asked, looking slightly disturbed. No. The Grimm are pretty much robots made of solidified negative emotions. Izuku explained. They may mimic living beings and share many of the same functions, but they have no actual will or minds of their own. That must be rather handy, Inada commented. Tell me, are the children living here comfortable with those things around? Mostly, Izuku answered. Many of them were rather off-put by them at first, but considering that they are also given control of them, they got over pretty fast. And while there are one or two of them that are still uncomfortable around them, I make it pretty easy to avoid them if you really want to. I see one last question. Does producing those Grimm cause any negative effects on the boy? Inada asked. No. Izuku shook his head. Yami's quirk has no immediate drawbacks. Its only weakness is that it requires him to absorb negative emotions as fuel. Without those, he can't make any more Grimm. Other than that, he can make as many as he pleases with no drawbacks. I see, what a powerful quirk, Inada commented. Tell me, have any of the children considered becoming heroes in the future? Many of them have, yes, Izuku affirmed. As you know, this place holds children with extremely potent quirks, so it makes sense that many of them would wish to use that power to defend others. I have a room designed for the children to train their quirks, with specialized equipment suited for them. Of course, I have to keep close watch of them while they train, to make sure they don't go too far while sparing. Of course, they're not under any pressure to go down the hero track, and they're free to choose any profession they wish. Well, next I would like to talk about funding, Inada said. Surely this place must cost a fortune to maintain, not even counting the surrounding area. Is this all paid for by DOC directly, or is DOC paying you to deal with this? DOC paid for the construction of the house and purchase of the land, Izuku explained. However, all other expenses must be handled by me, although they do pay me enough to handle it. Although I do receive money from other sources as well. Other sources? Inada questioned. Such as? Various places. My mother will send in quite a bit of money. I've also gotten into investing as well, which pulls in a ton of money as well. And how do I say this, sometimes, due to the children's unique quirks, they can produce materials that can then be sold. With no harm done to the child, of course. Izuku quickly clarified. For example, one of my daughters can produce spider webs and likes to design clothing. Really good, high-quality clothing by the way, but regardless, she likes to produce them using her webs. This, of course, means that she'll have a lot of extra pieces of discarded webbing that she throws away. Spider webs can of course be sold in high quantities, for quite a bit of money. Of course, I ask permission first before doing such things, and any profit that the children help generate will go into their allowances. And things like Kiba's donations that she gets from her streams, goes directly to her, as I had no part in obtaining that money. I mean, I'd argue you did, considering you purchased the equipment she used to get that money, the room she sleeps in, and the food she eats. Inada retorted. I suppose you could look at it that way. Izuku acknowledged. Still, Kiba worked to obtain that money, unlike the other children whose quirks just happen to produce valuable things. I would feel wrong in taking any of it. I see, but I must ask, if the government is providing you with all that money, why look for other avenues to gain income? Inada asked. Are they not providing enough? No, they're providing more than enough money, Izuku assured her. However, I feel uncomfortable with only a single source of income. As you stated, it keeps a ridiculous amount of money to keep this place up and running. Taking care of this many children, with quirks these dangerous, means that being rich is a requirement. If I didn't have all these other sources of income, and something happened that would cause the government to stop giving us money, then at most this place would last 2 weeks before the children no longer had anything to eat, and that's assuming this place would still be left standing, as I would no longer have money to constantly repair it. And no ordinary job would ever allow me to make enough money to take care of them, while also being able to watch over them. So now, with all these other sources of income, if the government were to stop giving you money, would you be alright financial speaking? Inada asked. Izuku leaned back and let out a breath. Well, I would definitely have cut down on any frivolous spending I do. As well as a lot of frivolous spending for the kids. We'd have enough money to keep going, but that'd be about it. Despite the fact that we'd have enough money to be considered rich, for the most part, we'd have to act as if we didn't have a lot of money. This is why I'm still currently searching for more ways to obtain income. Have you given any thought to donations? Inada asked. Izuku nodded. I have, but I'm not really to ask for any. Right now I'm still living quite wealthily, so it feels wrong to ask people for their money. Of course, if they are willing to donate, I won't refuse, and all money donated will be put into an emergency fund, used only for, well, emergencies. I see. Inada looked up at the clock. Well, I think we should start wrapping this up. Yes, I think that would be wise. Izuku nodded. Are there any final questions? Do you have a favorite child? Inada asked. Izuku laughed. Absolutely not. Chapter 80, Naya. A young woman looked at the forest in front of her smiling eagerly, with a dangerous look in her eyes. The woman looked like an Olympic athlete, with black shorts, a black sports bra covering a body that looked like it was made of pure muscle. Her most notable traits, however, were her cat-like attributes, those being her black tail, and black cat ears on top of her black hair, which was styled into a ponytail. Alright. I finally found it. Who knew all I had to do was look online? The woman said in a gruff, but somehow at the same time bubbly voice. Well, can't waste any more time. Let's go. And with that, the woman got down on all fours and leapt into the woods at astonishing speeds. Completely missing the sign that said not to enter, lest intruders get attacked. XXXXXXXXXXXX. Meanwhile, in Izuku's office, Izuku was looking through some papers, when suddenly the nearby seer went up to him. Izuku turned his attention to the seer. The seer then displayed an image of a cat-quirked woman running through the forest at high speeds, so much so that the seer that was watching her couldn't keep up, and she ran out of sight. An intruder? Izuku's eyes widened in alarm before a serious expression overtook him. What could she want? Could this be another assassin, HM? Well, let's hope that our security system works as well as it did last time. XXXXXXXXXX. As the woman ran through the forest on all fours, she heard something with her incredibly keen sense of hearing. Footsteps. Animal footsteps, and a lot of them, closing on her. Actually, she could also faintly hear something bellow her, and something flying through the air, both in between the trees and up in the sky. She looked to the side and saw a hint of the sabers that were fast approaching her. Oh. Those are what they called. Those shadow monsters. The woman looked frustrated, as for whatever reason she couldn't remember the name of these monsters, before figuratively shrugging it off. Ah, who cares? The real question is, why are they chasing me? Oh. This must be a test. I know what to do here. The woman then pounced to the side, jumping on top of Saber, and biting into its neck, her feline teeth ripping apart its flesh with ease, and killing it swiftly. The other sabers that were following suddenly stopped, before turning around and running away. They're running away? The woman tilted her head in confusion. Why? Rah! Suddenly a fleet griffin leaped down, intent on landing on the woman and holding her down. Only for the woman to backflip onto the closest one's back and bite into its neck, killing it as well, before landing on the ground. She then quickly turned and jumped up, her nails turning into sharp claws that tore into the sides of the griffins, as she used the griffins as footstools to reach the rest of them and slice through them with her claws. After cutting through about a dozen of them, she finally reached the final one and slashed its neck, killing it. Of course, now this meant she was plummeting to the ground, but she didn't seem too concerned. Once she got enough, she sunk her claws into the closest tree, which slowed her fall as she slid back to the forest floor, her claws leaving deep marks in the tree as she fell. The woman landed on her feet and took her claws out of the tree. Then, she heard something tunneling out of the ground around her, and creeps crawled out of the dirt around her, surrounding her completely. The woman smiled and readied her claws before jumping forward. She grabbed the creep by the mouth, and using her momentum, she flips it upside down and then slashes its exposed underside apart. They never stood a chance. XXXXXXXXXXX. Izuku watched as the woman tore apart the level 1 Grim with ease, like a tiger ripping apart rabbits. Alright, seems this is going to be an issue. He considered just skipping security level 2 and heading to level 3. After all, it seems like this woman was rather tough, and was approaching rather quickly. Well, it'll take some time for the level 3 Grim to approach, Izuku said to himself, before speaking into the seer. Send the level 2 Grim. And get the level 3 Grim ready for deployment. XXXXXXXXXXX. The woman was once again running on all fours towards the house when she heard more enemies coming towards her. Then, in front of her came a swarm of ravagers, screaming at her. Ow! The woman winced as the sound hit her ears, causing her to fold them down. She grit her teeth in anger, and bared her teeth at the swarm, ready to tear them apart. She jumped into the swarm, claws out, and slashed at the area around her, tearing apart dozens of the bat-like Grim, before doing it again and tearing apart another dozen. The ravagers all came at her, attempting to swarm her, and bit and slash into her flesh, but she tore them apart with her claws so easily and with such speed that it became difficult for them to get close, and any that did, she grabbed with her mouth, before biting down on them with her fangs, crushing them in her jaw. All in all, the swarm only held her in place for a few minutes and didn't get more than a couple of scratches in before they went down. Once the swarm had been dealt with, the woman proceeded to keep going on, running. She ran forward into a clearing, where she found 5 Borbotusk, and a pack of 10 beewolves coming at her. The Borbotusks were rolling towards her Sonic the Hedgehog style and approaching her quickly. She just grinned and charged forward even faster. Then just as the two were about to collide, she reached forward, grabbed its tusks, and jumped, leaping upwards and taking the Borbotusk with her, flipping in the air, and turning the Borbotusk over, before slamming it down onto its back as she landed. She then slashed its exposed underbelly open, killing it as the other Borbotusks rolled past. The other 4 Borbotusks stopped, uncurling before charging at her. However, the woman was much faster, and she rushed past them, sinking her claws in the small lines of unguarded fur on their back, and making deep slashes in them as she ran past, killing 2 more of them. She then ran over to one of the other Borborusk and lunged forward, and thrust her claws into its side, nearly impaling the monster, killing it with ease, before running over to the last one, and kicking it over, and sinking her claws into its exposed underside. With the Borbotusk dealt with, that only left the Beowulf pack, which was quickly approaching them. But they were absolutely no issue for her at all, as the woman charged forward at alarming speeds, and expertly slicing through the throats of the wolf Grim as she ran through the pack until she was behind them. In about 5 seconds, she murdered the entire pack. Then, 2 more Grim came into the clearing, Ursus to be specific. The 2 bear Grim approached the woman, standing up on their hind legs and getting ready to slash at her, only for her to slash open their throats in a second. With those 2 dead, the woman was about to get going. 3 King Taijuta came in from all around her. The one in front of her charged at her with its black head, with its fangs bared. The woman jumped over its attack and landed on its head, and just went to town, slashing away at the back of its head, until it went limp. The white head hissed in pain and went to bite the woman, only for her to kick its lower jaw, deflecting it upwards, and giving her access to its neck, which she promptly tore into, killing it. 1 down, 2 more to go. XXXXXXXXXX. I have definitely underestimated this woman. Izuku thought nervously as he watched her tear him, Grim, apart. She's definitely some kind of assassin. The way she kills these Grim, tearing into their necks and heads. She's like a super predator, actually given her quirk that makes sense. Still, I need to get serious. Switch to level 3 security, Izuku told the seer, just as Achiko burst into his office. Izuku, what's going on? The seers just showed us someone running through the forest. Achiko said with an extremely concerned expression. We have an intruder, Izuku told her urgently. Tell all of your classmates and my mother, and get all the kids inside. On it. Achiko said, turning around and running back out of the room. With Achiko gone, Izuku turned back to the seer. XXXXXXXXX. After disposing of a few more Grim along the way, the woman continued on her path through the forest. Then she heard 2 attacks coming towards her from above. Then 2 fireballs hit the ground behind her, exploding and singeing the ground. She stopped running, and 2 manticores dropped out of the sky right in front of her. The manticores quickly opened fire, shooting out fireballs at the woman, who dodged them all with ease, jumping and flipping from side to side, elegantly yet ferociously avoiding every attack. She then charged forward, ducking under one of the manticore, and then thrusting her arm up through its jaw, impaling its head with her hand. As the Grim died and faded away, the other one started to shoot at her again. The woman then jumped up, before diving down and axe-kicking the manticore's head, caving in its skull with her heel, killing it. The bone wasn't as tough as I thought, the woman said as she got her feet. She then heard the sound of something large coming towards her, on her right. Then 2 Baringels came charging out of the tree line and were coming right at her. One charged at her, before jumping up, bringing its arms up intent on smashing her into the ground. However, the woman simply jumped up towards the Baringel and slashed its throat open. The Baringel fell to the ground, slumping over before dissipating into smoke, as the woman landed on her feet and ran at other Baringel. She got real close to it, and before it could react, she jumped up, flipping on its neck, before slashing this one's neck as well, killing it. The woman jumped off the dying Grim, once again, gracefully landing on her feet. Wow, this is a great workout, the woman said cheerfully, as she wiped some sweat off her forehead. What a fun test. After taking a minute to stretch, she got back on all fours and started running. XXXXXXXXX. Eventually, the woman made her way to another clearing, however, this was a dead end, as she was faced with a steep cliffside. The woman stared at the cliffside for a moment. I wonder Before she could finish her thoughts, she heard something beneath her. She jumped back, as a blind worm shot out of the ground. Rah! The bling worm screamed at her, before burying itself back into the ground. She could barely hear it, tunneling under her, coming towards her. Its predictability would be its downfall. When she heard it start coming back up, she jumped back a bit, dodging as it burst out of the ground. Then she quickly jumped at it, digging her claws into its exposed belly, and tearing a hole in its flesh open, that was big enough for her to crawl inside, which she did. Rag-ha! The blind worm thrashed about in pain, as it felt the woman tear up its insides, until eventually, it flopped onto the ground, and turned into smoke, eventually releasing the woman. Wasn't as bad as I thought, the woman said, as all the Grim guts dissipated off her. Thought that would be grosser. As she dusted herself off, she looked back at the cliff. I wonder if I can dash. Once again her thought was interrupted, as she heard something coming towards her. Something really big, and something really slow. It would likely take whatever that was a few minutes to get towards her, and she could easily avoid it. But where was the fun in that? Instead, she decided to take a bit of a break, catch her breath, do some stretches. She had no idea how long this test would be, so it was important to pace herself. And so after a few minutes of rest, it came. The Goliath. Oh, you are a big boy. The woman licked her lips in anticipation. Let's go. The Goliath charged at her, at the same time the woman also charged at it. She jumped up onto its back, turned around, and went to slash at the back of its neck. Since it was thick, it took a lot of slashes, but since the Goliath was so slow and heavy, it's not like it had any way to get her off its back. So all it could do was scream in pain and run around, as the woman's claws dug into it. After half a minute, she managed to do enough damage to kill the thing, causing it to collapse and dissipate. Wow, that thing's skin was pretty tough, the woman said, before turning back to the cliff. Alright, let's go. The woman then ran up to the cliff, and jumped onto the side, embedding her claws into the rock, before climbing up the cliff. XXXXXXXXXXX. After getting to another clearing, the woman sat down behind a rock. Phew. Man, this forest is big. She sat down for a bit, resting her feet after all that running and fighting, before looking towards the forest. Hey, you've been following me for a while. Do you want to fight or something? There was a short pause, before suddenly she used her hands to push herself up into the air, dodging an invisible slash attack that created 4 claw marks in the rock behind her. The woman landed on the rock, grinning down at her invisible attacker. Ha! Nice try. But I can hear you. It was then that the hound made itself visible, standing on all fours and glaring upwards at her. Then, the woman jumped up and went to kick the thing in the head, but the hound jumped back, avoiding the attack. The hound then changed its form, standing upright, before reeling its arm back, and then shooting it forward, its arm extending like one of Kyosei's tendrils. The woman then ducked under its stretchy arm, and slashed it apart, as she ran towards the hound. She got up close to the creature and was about to slash at its neck when suddenly, a thick piece of armor grew there. Of course, she slashed at it anyway. However, the armor proved to be too tough, and while she did leave a few claw marks, it was nothing too deep. The hound then swung its head down, intent on taking a bite out of her shoulder. She dropped to the floor to avoid the bite, and then rolled over to the side, before jumping back onto her feet. There she saw that the claw mark she left in the hound's armored neck was healing rapidly until was good as new. Oh, this thing is gonna be tough. The woman smirked, before getting into an offensive stance. Alright, let's test the limits of your healing, shall we? Vush. The woman dashed forward, going much faster than she had been before, meaning she wasn't holding back. In a flash, she ran past the hound, slashing its chest, before quickly circling around, running back, and slashing it again, before turning back around, and running back at it, this time slashing its back. The woman ran circles around the hound, slashing up its body heavily. However, the hound seemed mostly unaffected, despite taking massive injuries, although these injuries didn't last long, as it regenerated very quickly. Seeing as her opponent seemed mostly unaffected by her attacks, she decided it was time to go for a fatal blow. She jumped back, before doing some backflips away from the hound, before getting into a pouncing stance, and then launching herself at the Grim with explosive power. Shink! She thrust her arm right through its heart, impaling him like a spear. And the hound looked about as unaffected by this as it did by the rest of her attacks. In fact, this attack would prove to be a huge error, as the woman felt the hound's body hardened, both inside and out, as more armor formed around her arm, locking it in place. Oh shit! The woman said, realizing that this mistake, as she tried to pull her arm out, to no avail. Shit. The hound raised it up, its arms ready to attack the woman. However, she used her other arm to quickly cut both its arm off. She then jumped up, getting her feet onto its chest, as she tried to force her arm out of its chest. And after some pushing, she finally managed to dislodge her arm from the monster. She fell to the ground, backflipping away from the monster once more. Alright. So attacking its body is no good. No matter how fast I attack it, it'll just keep regenerating. But it has to have a weakness. Let's try its head. The hound grew its arms, and in fact, it grew some more arms as well, 2 more to be precise, right in its chest. All 4 arms shot out, extending to try and catch the woman in her claws. The woman shot forward, ducking under one of the arms, and slashing it, before ducking to the left to dodge another one, and then jumping up to dodge the 3rd arm, before kicking away the last arm that came for her midair. She dived down at the hound with her claws pointed at its head. The hound jumped back to avoid her, however, the woman simply lunged forward at it, and landed on its chest, while grabbing its head. She then dug her claws into the side of its neck and started trying to pull its head off. Meanwhile, the hound's four extended arms grew back, and turned around, before rocketing towards the woman that was ripping his head off. Grrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrr Rah! Then with one final pull, she ripped its head off. Fortunately, after this happened, the hound's body went limp and started to fade into smoke. That's not to say the hound was dead, its head was still very much alive, and snarling the woman. The woman saw that it was quickly growing back its body. If she left it alone, he'd probably fully heal back its body in a minute or two. Not that she'd let it. She immediately dropped his head to the ground and stepped on it, slowly crushing its skull until splat! She crushed its head and the brain that was inside. Ew! The woman said as realized she got child brain all over her foot. As she wiped the brains of a 7-year-old boy off her foot and onto the grass, a seer watched her from the shadows. XXXXXXXXXX. Okay, so she defeated a hound. Crap. Alright. No more holding back. Izuku said to the seer. She wants a fight. Then she'll get one. Initiate security level 4 and get the other 2 hounds. He would not have his family threatened. Even if he had to unleash hell on this woman. Hopefully, she'd survive at the very least. That will be it for this part. I hope everyone enjoyed. If you did, please leave a like and comment if you want part 16. If you want to hear more from me, subscribe. I hope to see you all in the next one.